The live open's going to be singing.
Oh, it's me. I've been wondering if... All right.
That's not getting edited out. Welcome to another edition of Everybody Hates Cleveland, the podcast. That's right. We do more than one of these a month. This is our second in 12 days, I must say. And I'm feeling pretty good about myself. The Indians are coming off a walk-off win from Carlos Santana and a great start from Trevor Bauer. We'll talk about that. Talk about whatever kind of things get in our way along our meandering river of a podcast. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, your friendly neighborhood lounge lizard and crooner, your new title, Michael Hattery. Michael, you didn't make the game last night, and the Indians won. Is this a thing?
Yeah, it's a big time thing. I am 2-7 right now when I'm at the game, which means without me, the Indians are like the second best team in baseball. So pour one out for Mike Hattery, everybody.
I think it's fair that if you can just pull out random, like, nonsensical stats like that, then everybody else can do the same. So just pick a random date and pull out a stat that fits, and let's just roll with it. That'll be the podcast today. I'm just kidding. Don't shut it off.
I've been learning a lot from Jensen Lewis and, all these Anthony Lima, these unmatched minds.
All right, well, we're not them, so let's keep going. All right, so Mike, as I in writing this new piece, The List, I was kind of paying attention to Carlos Santana a little bit, and the list was kind of started actually with him and his home run prowess this year. He's clearly got power, the mystical power that everybody has to have, and I'm talking home run power. He hit his 15th. Gosh, I don't even know. Was it his 15th? 14th home run last night. 15th. That's getting edited out. Edit this out. He hit his walk-off home run. I don't know. What do you make of this power source? I mean, it's very nonsensical if you look at it, which may be the theme of this, because a lot of people are saying, well, he's playing DH, therefore he's hitting more home runs. Most of his home runs have come while he's playing first base. What do you make of this power surge? Is this a thing? Is this because he's healthy? Is this because he hasn't had to do 3 or 4 different things throughout the year, play first base, play third base? Is this because his role is, you're the DH and sometimes play first? I mean, what is it? Is it just this is how it's working? Is it his place in the lineup? I don't know. I just threw a lot at you. Is it nothing? Is it just, okay, they're going out?
Santana's season is one that makes no sense to me at all. In so many ways, actually. I think I wrote about this a little earlier in the year, but he's someone who already had a better than league average strikeout rate, and now he has like an elite one, which just I never really saw coming. But also the walk rate declined with it when he's moved to the top of the order. I think a lot of it is Santana leadoff, and I know he was hitting, later in the lineup last night. But I think Santana leadoff sees a different sort of collection of pitches. Santana leadoff, sees some more strikes than he was seeing when he was hitting 4th or 5th. So I think that's really changed his approach a little bit. I think he's more aggressive inside the strike zone early in counts. And that could be part of the power spike. And the other thing is, in terms of hard contact, he's posting his highest hard contact percentage of his big league career right now at 38%, and the 3rd lowest soft percentage. So he's just making a lot more hard contact. So I think, I don't really know what the root cause of it is, and I don't think it's necessarily him DHing all the time or this or that. I think it's just he's made some adjustments. He's a little different than he was. It's hurt his OBP a little bit, his previous gold mine. I mean, it's still valuable, but the power's been phenomenal. I think it's because he's being a little more aggressive early in counts.
Could it? I mean, we've talked a little bit about injuries with Santana. Last year, obviously, he played much of the season with an injury that nobody really knew about. Could this be just a healthy Santana power-wise? I mean, you look at all the different parts of this is, he's obviously, he's splitting his time really between hitting fifth and hitting first. Whereas before, you would pepper more of that cleanup role. Is it, as you mentioned, is it because he's maybe, utilizing a different skill set that he's transferring from first, but hitting first to fifth? I mean, could that be it? Or is it just a health thing too? I mean, could that be playing a part in this, where Santana, because he doesn't have the wear and tear of playing in the field, is just healthier?
Yeah, I think the health thing is a big part of it. And I think something Jim, I know you touched on this a lot, and I know Adam Burke's touched on it a little, is the guy had a baby last year. He had back problems. You want to mess up your sort of, daily rhythms. That's a big part of it. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough with baseball players, but you guys hit on that. And the other thing is, yes, last year was sort of an outlier in terms of how low his ISO was. Usually he's around 190, and last year was 160. So I think, we kind of, I think there's, the reasonable evidence at this point that the back injury that he played through the second half of last season probably had an effect on his power that we didn't pay enough attention to. So I definitely think that's at the heart of it. And I also think he's making some more sort of choices in terms of his approach at the plate when he's at the top of the order that have sort of affected his ISO.
Well, I think it's a fun season when everybody's quiet on Carlos Santana. Usually he's not hitting enough power and his average is 202, and we don't understand baseball. I will say this. I got into, of course, I was talking about his power the other day with a friend of mine, and of course the first thing out of his mouth, but he's hitting under 250, right? And his OBP is down. So I guess they got me there. I don't know. It's just, but it is a quiet, when it's quiet on the Carlos Santana front, it either means something really good is happening or somebody else is easier to talk about. And perhaps Michael Brantley being out in the outfield conundrum, and the Indians playing from first with a good rotation, maybe that's stealing the thunder away from Carlos Santana. Thankfully, I guess when you're focused on Carlos Santana, bad things are happening. So let's blame him. So not a lot of blame going on, at least not from my vantage point. So let's move on to another topic of conversation from last night, and that's Trevor Bauer. And so if you go through the process of Trevor Bauer, this, in my estimation, a brilliant trade in 2012 to acquire who they clearly thought was going to be the ace of their staff for years to come. Remember, in 2012, when they got him in December of that year, we didn't know about Corey Kluber. They were hoping on Carlos Santana, but the Carlos Santana we'd seen up to that point was an erratic mess and a head, guy full of, head issues and any kind of, existential, I struggle with not getting angry at someone stuff. You've got Danny Salazar was, most, experts thought he was going to be a reliever. Not really, but just a couple. So really the Trevor Bauer trade was to acquire an ace. Of course, that has been mostly missed over the years, and that he hasn't been an ace. And I wouldn't even say that he's that now, but he does still have elite stuff, and he's acquired this kind of battling persona, which is kind of interesting to me because, when discussing Trevor Bauer over the past 2 years, I think, that head case in a different way than Carlos Carrasco back in the day. But that kind of intellectual, I think too much head case that has been his MO. What do you see, Mike, as being the difference this year? We talked in our last podcast about selection, and that kind of fits all into this, the pitches that he's using. And I wrote about that earlier this week. But what do you see as being, he has kind of acquired this fight through it mentality. Last night was a great case. He ended up going 7 innings. Francona gave him the ball for one more inning when I think he had 103 pitches going into that inning. Do you see kind of a different pitcher than we thought coming out, or is this kind of the beginning of him turning into the ace that the Indians thought they got in 2012?
Oh, gosh. I think we're just sort of seeing the stuff finally being allowed to play up. the command is just getting competent enough that his arsenal, which is fantastic, is really, really playing up. There's a really fantastic article on Fangraphs that I recommend people read, and it has totally slipped my mind who wrote it, so apologies for that. But it talked about the fact that there are certain strikes that are really valuable.
Scott Spratt wrote that.
All right. So Bauer's getting the sort of 2-0-2-1 strike, which is pretty valuable, and he's getting it at a good rate, which Spratt uses to sort of note that the command's improving, and I think that's probably a good case. And the other thing is the arsenal usage. You wrote about this, I wrote about this. The two-seamer sinker is something that Bauer's throwing a lot more. He's getting a ton of ground balls, which is awesome in front of this defense. But he's getting a ton of ground balls. He's not throwing up in the strike zone as much, which, his home run per fly ball is declining now. Who saw that coming? So, I think that the spiking use of the two-seamer is sort of what's changed Trevor Bauer, and that the command's been better with the two-seamer than with the four-seam fastball, I think. And it's getting him the sort of like ball and play contact that we look for. His ball and play contact is great. He's getting more ground balls, less fly balls, less home runs. And that, helps him to play up. So I think we've seen the leap, and it's pretty exciting.
So, I think the best part of his arsenal right now to me is, past the two-seam usage, it seems as though I guess the best way to use it is in every start, almost every single start, we see him almost evening out his pitches. He clearly has a game plan going against righties as opposed to lefties, but he's not overthrowing one pitch or the other. He seems to be throwing everything for strikes. And this is kind of that. So, and I kind of started it off talking about, is he going to be the ace or is he going to be kind of that workhorse? And I think we get into these kind of odd discussions, these extremist discussions where they don't really see both being the same. Is this kind of the picture that we really, what the Indians thought they were going to get? This guy with multiple pitches that he could throw for strikes. He had velocity. He also had command. He could throw it inside to a lefty. He could throw it outside to a lefty. He could throw it inside to a righty. He could throw it outside to a righty. Really, Mike, isn't this shift to the two-seamer more of a utilization against certain batters than him strictly going to the two-seamer? Isn't that really what we're seeing? We're seeing him use the two-seamer one way. We're seeing him use the four-seamer the other, as opposed to him just using the four-seamer. Whereas I think when I talk about Corey Kluber literally just went to the two-seamer. He still peppers in a four-seam here and there, but he's a predominant two-seam pitcher, whereas Bauer seems to be using these pitches in case-specific instances, which when we're looking at an IQ guy like Bauer, that seems to be the sense. Is that really what we're seeing here, is him just using pitches in better spots and throwing more strikes?
Yeah, I think it is, and I don't have usage rates sitting right in front of me right now, but from my understanding, in terms of the two-seamer and the fastball, he's throwing the two-seamer about 30% of the time, and the four-seamer about 25%. I'm not looking at it, but I think that's the balance. And I definitely think it's sort of, he's balancing, picking spots with both pitches based on batter handedness and really batter skill base. The other thing is the curveball this year has drawn a negative 36 weighted runs created plus, which, if you don't know what that means, weighted RC plus league average is 100. So to draw a negative value is absolutely absurd. He's getting a 60% K rate with his curveball. And that's really just a function of he's throwing more strikes, which allows that curveball to play up, because that was always an elite pitch for Bauer. And the problem was he didn't get ahead enough to get guys to chase, where they were in situations where they needed to swing, or in enough even counts. And so him just getting up a little more in counts, throwing a few more strikes, allows a really elite arsenal to make guys look silly. So right now we have an above league average starter, and we'll see what else is in there. I don't want to jump on board. We have a few more starts before we can really start hopping on the train, but he might be the best 4 starter in baseball right now. That may not be hubris.
Well, I mean, that curveball is the one pitch that he does utilize against both. I mean, the movement on that pitch is the vertical movement on that pitch is amazing. I think if you really look at all the Indian starters and you look at the horizontal and vertical movement of all of his pitches, it's really easy to see why he's been elite. I said elite.
Well,
I also said said ace too in this conversation. So for those of you that get uptight, and for those of you on YouTube, I'm getting real close. I'm sorry. I'll never say it again. He's always had elite movement. He's always had that elite movement. I think with him throwing more strikes, Mike, it makes it really hard for hitters on both sides of the plates to stay back.
Yeah, it's pitching is so simple in some ways and so complex. And I think we see it with Josh Tomlin where, he has that plus curveball, but like how much of an advantage you have with hitters if you can just get ahead and command the strike zone. And I think, Bauer, we were always hoping for him not to be Josh Tomlin in terms of commanding the strike zone because he doesn't need to be Josh Tomlin. He just needs to be 80% of Josh Tomlin in terms of commanding the strike zone or 70%. And that arsenal's good enough that it'll let him play up to a really good pitcher. And we're sort of seeing that. So that's outstanding. Yeah, this staff is so fun now because you have Tomlin, who is probably your 5 starter, and he's been fantastic over the last year. He's got a 3.3 ERA, and each of these guys has their own special pitch. I mean, Tomlin has a plus curveball. Bauer has a plus curveball. Salazar is the best splitter in baseball. Kluber has 3+ pitches. Carrasco has 2+ pitches. I mean, in terms of arsenals, the Indians have happened into a collection of fantastic arsenals. And I don't know, you got to be impressed with the Indians, but on the other hand, it's just sort of like a magical intersection of circumstances that arrived so that, Kluber falls in your lap. You fix Kluber. Salazar, has enough arm health to make the splitter plus. Carrasco finally figures it out. He wasn't the primary prospect in the Lee trade. It was Jason Knapp, who's never pitched above A ball. It's just sort of, and Tomlin has this plus pitch and is a good major league pitcher. And he was, 20th round pick. And then, Bauer's the one guy with great pedigree who's finally figured out, it seems like how to use his stuff. And this sort of intersection of events has created a phenomenal rotation, and it's a blast.
Well, I mean, we went through so many years where the Indians were drafting the same types of pitchers to teach them the same slider. Whereas this rotation is built with, you've got Kluber who came in a trade, you've got Bauer who came in a trade, you've got Salazar who is a free agent, then went under the Tommy John. You had Josh Tomlin, a soft tosser through his whole career, even softer now than he was before. And then you had Carlos Carrasco, who was probably part of that slider crew in that they brought him over earlier than the rest in that trade in 2009. But obviously as a top prospect with multiple, plus pitches, as you've mentioned, they're not going to shift his game all that much. So it was kind of this, and it wasn't on purpose, although now looking back, obviously they were just acquiring good arms. Maybe it was in a sense. So yeah, our rotation has this interesting look, and we haven't even talked about the Clevengers and the Houses and the Andersons, who are all kind of flitting around with different things in the minors as well. So the rotation is looking strong. We're actually going to talk a little bit about that now too. However, we're going to utilize this in a conversation starting with the bullpen. Last night, Brian Shaw comes out in the 8th. Everything worked out. Shaw in the 8th, Allen in the 9th, walk-off home run. Life is good. So something has to be done with the bullpen. And, we can talk about Francona's usage. I think it almost gets tiring because, if it's, we watched it in his first year with Pistano. We've seen it with varying position players over the years. And we were talking off air, Mike, the other day about the comparison between Micah Vilas and Brian Shaw, where I think, I'm trying to kind of whittle my way through a piece about Brian Shaw not being as bad as we think, but he's being used in these high leverage situations where his tired arm is not playing out. Now, he did only give up a leadoff single. And I left that pause in for a reason, because when you come in the 8th inning, there's 2 things you don't want to do. Well, 3. You don't want to give off a leadoff walk. You really don't want to give off a leadoff hit. And you really don't want to give up a run. He's been doing that a lot. All of them. So, past Shaw, it's not like we have this, cavalcade of fantastic relievers. I think when we talked about relievers at the beginning of the year, Mike, we were looking, we talked a lot about them in the same way we talked about the outfield. There's some intriguing names. Of course, Cody Allen, in my opinion, is elite, regardless of how he's used. I think he's feeling a lot of pressure being the guy and maybe the only guy. And while we've got some interesting names like Otero and Chamberlain, neither one are who I would say are guys that when they walk out onto the mound, everybody goes, thank God we got these guys coming out. Especially when you parallel them to, the $20 to $30 million top 4 for Kansas City. Now, it's obvious, Mike, that we've built our bullpen in a much different way than Kansas City because we have this fantastic rotation. But shouldn't we have more than Cody Allen? And God bless Brian Shaw, and he's probably better than I think he is. But am I wrong, Mike? Is he not an 8? I mean, how in the hell does our manager say, yeah, we are not just going to throw him out after one 8th inning blow up? We don't have anybody else, though. I mean, I get it. I almost get it. I almost get what he's saying. Like, who else do you put in an 8?
Zach McAllister. But no. Okay. So this is like 2 discrete conversations that I think we need to have. And this is like one of the criticisms of the Indians organization that's kind of weird. The Indians have really failed to develop relief guys, and it's not something they haven't sunk assets into. I think you talked about this in your piece somewhat. We had this stretch where in the last 3 years, there was a lot of hubris about Austin Adams, Sean Armstrong, CC Lee, Langwell, and 3 or 4 other guys who had a lot of success. And they just haven't had success converting these guys to bullpen arms. And Cody Allen is, really one of their few success stories other than Pistano of 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a huge problem. So I think that's sort of an organizational failure. Bullpen arms should be the easiest thing to develop. They really should be. You just need, you take guys who are like college starters and have decent arsenals but can't stay in the rotation, who throw 95 and have maybe one secondary pitch that's competent, and you can get 2 7th and 8th inning guys. I mean, this is not hard. The Indians spent a 4th round pick on Kyle Crockett solely as a reliever, and have gotten very little from him outside of his first sort of season in the system. So I think that's a pretty dynamic problem, and I think the Indians have really sort of had a system failure in really developing bullpen arms, which is something that if you're a small market team, you have to be able to do bullpen arms inside your own system because their cost is much higher than they should be on the open market, and it's just pure system failure if you can't build a competent bullpen.
Well, and that's where you talk about a guy like McAllister. That's where I am most interested in, this kind of theory that lots of teams use, but I think the Cardinals are probably the ones who are most visible with it when they don't even take, Mike, their starters with only 2 pitches. They take their elite starters, throw them in the pen with the big league club and give them experience at the big league level. Now McAllister is a guy who kind of on the back end of starting, they moved to the pen almost because they ran out of room for him in the rotation, and he's panned out as a guy who could be the 8th inning guy. And listen, I'm not knocking Zach McAllister. He should be our 8th inning guy. But, I mean, again, when you parallel our bullpen to Kansas City's bullpen, he's the 5th guy in that bullpen, maybe the 4th. So, and again, we shouldn't have Kansas City's bullpen. I don't want to spend $20 to $30 million, but to me, this year, in a year where I think the Indians should be and could be and may be the favorites to get out of the AL and into the World Series, this should be the year where you're doing everything you can. And if they're not going to pull the trigger on a trade because they don't want to give up assets, and I get that. We haven't had assets in a long time, and we don't want to give them up, and I understand that. And as John Grimm points out all the time, trade deadline moves are dumb because you give up too much. I get it. But holy crap, we've got Clevenger. We've got Anderson, who, again, Anderson may be the spit and image of Zach McAllister, who, again, may be utilized in a wrong way. You've got TJ House, who I don't think the Indians are ever planning on using him as a starter at this point, the way that they're utilizing him as a starter in Columbus. I mean, there's 3 guys right there. These are guys you can bring up right now and put in your pen, who are automatically better in many respects, especially with elite arms. And again, elite's not the word I want to use there, but power arms that could be beneficial in a bullpen. And Ryan Merritt. See, to me, you got 2 righties, you got 2 lefties. Bring them up. Bring them up in any form or fashion that you want to, one at a time. I don't care. Who cares about Columbus's rotation? Who cares about winning cups or whatever they win there? I don't care. I'm so sick of people on Twitter. Well, they're winning games. We're elite. Shut up. It's Columbus. It's AAA. Learn about AAA. Bring these guys up. Put them in the pen. Tell them it's for 3 months. Get it done. Enough of this crap with these bottom-of-the-barrel garbage bin minor league contracts that pan out until it counts. Sorry. I just woke up the entire neighborhood.
No,
And you know what, Mike? Enough of this. Well, we don't want to ruin them. For crying out loud. Using them for 1 or 2 innings for 3 months isn't going to make your body forget how to start. Look at St. Louis. Their whole damn rotation has guys that pitched a whole season in the pen and were pretty damn good. Adam Wainwright, look him up. Carlos Martinez, look him up. Okay, I digress.
But no, I totally jump on board. And I think one of the really awesome things about this Bauer leap that we've been watching is that we're a lot less worried about back end depth. I think, a month and a half ago, we were looking and saying, look, we hope Bauer sticks it out, but, Clevenger or Anderson might be needed to sort of slide into that back end role. Now, Anderson's injured and we can take him out of the conversation.
Right.
Right now. And he'll be back. And I think a transition to the pen for Anderson actually makes a lot of sense. I think if he's throwing 97 with a mediocre secondary pitch, he's probably a really good 7th inning guy. And that solves a big problem. I think Clevenger for 3 or 4 months in the pen makes a lot of sense. And I agree. You don't break starters with 3 months in the pen late in the season. David Price's first time in the big leagues, he was closing for the Tampa Bay Rays on a ALCS run.
Hey, remember Trevor Bauer? Hey, you know what, Mike? He pitched a whole month in the pen. And guess what they did? Oh, my gosh. They put him in the rotation without stretching him out.
Did Carrasco pitch in the pen? I can't remember.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, for almost 3 months. And then guess what they did? Oh, my gosh. They used him as a starter without stretching him out. They just put him in the rotation and let him pitch 65 innings or 65 pitches. Hey,
so, yeah.
But you got to protect Columbus and you got to protect the arms. Oh, and who cares about the World Series? God. It's Father's Day weekend, dude. I'm the father. I'm not supposed to be getting angry.
I know. Jeez. All right.
Sorry.
So this podcast can't go much farther without me taking at least like 3 pot shots at Terry Francona. So I'm going to do that now.
The sad thing is I'm the closest to doing it, and I'm the biggest Francona guy of the 2 of us. So I'm sorry. Now here's what's going to happen. I'm going to shut up now, and I'm not going to talk for at least 2 minutes. Go.
Okay. So I want to see somebody in the Indians press corps go to Terry Francona and say, so you had your starter go 7 innings. You have 8 men in your bullpen. The first man you bring out of your bullpen has a 5+ FIP in late June and has mediocre stuff. Why'd you do it, Terry? Why'd you do it? I want to see that conversation had, because I know that, Chris Assenheimer says that we can't criticize Terry Francona because rings and all of these things that are so beautiful. But nevertheless, I really wonder on, at what point Francona will receive a little scrutiny for running those Shaw out there constantly. I think one of the biggest things managers are responsible for doing is putting players in a position to succeed. And he's the 4th or 5th best man in the bullpen right now. And that's not saying, and I'm not saying the Indians bullpen is good, because it's not. And I'm not saying it has great arms, because it doesn't. But he's the 4th or 5th best guy there by far. And there's no question. There's Otero and there's McAllister in front of him. And there's Allen, and maybe there's Chamberlain in front of him. So he might be the 6th best guy. So I think the point is, for me, it's not a great bullpen, and you can totally defend Tito by saying that. But also, Shaw doesn't belong in that spot. The next sort of thing that really irritates me with this whole bullpen scam is the fact that we have 8 of them, and our bench consists of Michael Martinez, someone who's a quadruple A player, Chris Jimenez, Juan Uribe, who can't walk right now, and physically can't walk. I mean, I'm really concerned. Sounds very painful, the life that he's living. And that's, and whatever outfielder sitting on the bench on the 4. And so, we have these games where we have Chris Jimenez and Michael Martinez playing in the same game, so that we can have, a deeper bullpen of guys he doesn't use. And he's done this for 3 years, because Shaw will pitch 80 games, and that's why Brian Shaw isn't good anymore. And the 8th guy will pitch 30, but we keep him anyway. So some of this has to do with Antonetti has to take the toys away from Francona. And some of this has to do with the bullpen isn't talented. But, Francona has to get these guys in positions to succeed, and Shaw's not in that position. And I'll tell you what, I haven't played Major League Baseball. I haven't even played minor league baseball. But I've played, highly competitive high school sports, and we all have. And I'll tell you, we've all played on a team where the coach puts, one of your friends, somebody in a bad position, or isn't playing the best guy, the 8th or 9th guy, isn't putting him in the right role to succeed. And I'll tell you, as a player, you get really pissed off and you get really frustrated. And so this isn't just it's frustrating for the fans to see Shaw blow games thing. It's really frustrating as a player when you're seeing a player misused, you're seeing him fail consistently, and you see your manager keep going to him when there are other alternatives. That's really demoralizing and frustrating. And I don't think we talk about that enough, because it's brutal. That's a brutal thing to experience when you're a player, especially when you think somebody else can do it well. If you think McAllister can go in and at least be competent there, or somebody else, and you see a manager consistently going to a worse player, that is brutal as a competitor to experience, and that really irritates me.
Well, and there's your comparison with Aviles, because Aviles last year, utilized in the right role, would have been, to me, the perfect utility guy. Instead, he becomes this anchor, positioning himself in center field and weird left field, and thankfully Jose Ramirez, who's being utilized in the exact same way, actually is youthful enough and athletic enough to make these fantastic transitions, while looking kind of funny doing it, but doing it, letting his athletic ability kind of take over. I mean, honestly, if he wasn't as athletic as he was, we'd be slamming Ramirez right now the same way that we slammed Aviles last year. Jose Ramirez just happens to have a lot more athletic ability than Aviles does at this point in his career, but that's neither here nor there. So, Mike, let's be real. We know they're not going to bring up all these starters. At least I don't think they are. And again, Danny Madden, if you listen to this, you must know where I'm standing to actually breathe Mike Clevenger into the bullpen. It's not something I want. However, that might be the position that we're in. But here we are as we close in with 2 weeks to go until July, when we start really talking about trades. What do you think the Indians, Mike, are going to do in the next month to support this current team? Are they going to improve the outfield? Are they going to improve the bullpen? Or are they going to supplement said outfield, said bullpen with minor leaguers? Antonetti came out and very curiously talked about Bradley Zimmer and Clint Frazier 3 days ago as being options, which almost I didn't even know. At first I thought it was a joke, and then I thought, what's he up to? And then I thought, oh shit, Brantley's not coming back. But then I mean, you know, and then I keep talking about Roberto Perez, and everyone's like, well, you know, it's 8 to 12 weeks, but to not hear anything, like they don't talk about anything. So this Zimmer and Frazier stuff seems weird to me. Is it reality that they might bring these guys up? Is it they're just covering all their bases right now in case they don't make a trade and they have to bring them up? Is it we're just setting the stage in case Brantley's not ready, and it doesn't seem like he's close. Maybe Peter Gammons was right. So, again, I just asked 57 questions, but to go back to the beginning, what do you see them doing in the next month? What do you make of this Frazier-Zimmer business, and what do you think about Michael Brantley? Is he going to make it back this year and be effective, or were we right in March? Should they just have kept him off the field until now?
Well, you asked me 3 questions, but I want to talk about something that you didn't ask me. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'll answer your 3 questions.
Mike, it's our podcast, man. We could go for 5 hours. We could talk about the cat. We're not. We could talk about the Cavs if we wanted to right now. We're not. Go Cavs. We're not. So you can talk about whatever you want, and I'm even going to shut up and let you talk without interrupting.
Okay.
Go.
So here's what bugs me. And you talked about this, but I think this is something that needs to be re-emphasized. Here's what I'll tell you. Will Roberts, Sean Moramonda, and Ryan Merritt are never going to be good big league starters, but they all could be useful big league relievers. Why do we have to have all 3 still in the starting rotation? I know you have to eat innings in your system, but go sign some like 30-year-old who's still looking for work, move Merritt to the pen, and see if you can get a competent lefty. Move Will Roberts to the pen, see if his velo plays up. Move Moramonda to the pen and see if it plays up. None of these guys are big league starters. They're not. Moramonda walks too many dudes. Merritt doesn't strike guys out enough. He doesn't have good enough stuff. Jim's going to drown himself. He's going to asphyxiate himself on air.
Namina talks about this all the time, and he's right. Why they don't seem like this is obvious, and it can't not be obvious to the front office, and it can't not be obvious to the management team on the field. Everything that you just said. So why don't the Indians get these guys ready for their ultimate roles? What in the hell is going on?
And then, all right, so I'm going to move to these 3 questions. First off, the Indians aren't going to do anything at the deadline. Nothing. Second off, if they do, it's going to be to address the bullpen. Third, Zimmer and Frazier. If you look at Frazier's stats and you didn't look at his age, which is awesome, which make his stats even better. But if you look at a guy raking in AA, not striking out a ton, posting a really nice ISO, walking a good above league average, and pretty solid defense and right, and you didn't look at his age, you'd say, this guy could play in the big leagues this year. You would. But the thing is, he was drafted as a prep outfielder. He's 21 years old, and that's all anybody knows. And that makes his stats look even better in AA because we're saying, oh, he's really young for the level and he's making adjustments. But if you cross those out, you'd say, this guy's like really close to big league ready. And we don't think we'd hurt him that much if he played in the big leagues. So that's kind of my thing with Frazier. I think he's closer than people think.
Especially trajectory. We talk a lot about his trajectory, and obviously he's upticking. Every level he's gotten better.
That doesn't happen, especially when you're young for every level. It's absurd. It's just out of the box absurd to see guys who improve power and decline strikeout rate while climbing levels and being young for the level is off the charts awesome. And he's someone who's done that. And I think if you ignore his age and just look at his production at that level, he's a lot closer to the big leagues than people want to admit he is. I think he's a late season call-up. I wouldn't hate if they called him up early. I think he'd adjust. I think he's a smart guy who knows how to make adjustments. He's proven that, and who has the IQ to make adjustments and has the skill set to make adjustments too.
Where does he play in the out? Where does he play in the outfield?
He plays right and left. You boot Uribe. Jose Ramirez is your starting third baseman, and then he platoons with, he plays like 5 days a week between Chisenhall and Brantley and left and right. And maybe he plays center because maybe he can defend that as well as Naquin. He probably can. Certainly can. Here's the thing. If it doesn't stunt his development, Clint Frazier is as good in center field right now as Michael Martinez and Tyler Naquin are. Like there's no question about that. And so's Brad Zimmer, for the love of Pearl, because he'd at least hit 10 home runs in the second half, even though he'd strike out a ton. And he can play competent defense in center. Like the thing is, those guys would both be as good as at least what we have in center field right now.
Well, here's what I love about Zimmer. I'll just get this out and then I'll shut up again. Is we were kind of on the forefront talking about Frazier, Mike, and I can recall talking to you about him last August about the uptick and Zimmer struggling in Akron. And here's what's fun to me is now everybody's kind of swinging over to the Frazier side. And now most people are saying Zimmer's garbage. They're both really, really good. And Zimmer's struggling right now with something, and his K rate's way up. And, maybe this is a sign that he's not quite the prospect that we thought, but maybe not. Maybe they're working on something. I don't know. But for crying out loud, you can have more than one good prospect in an organization at one given time. So let's back off the Zimmer sucks now because Frazier's doing good and his K rate's up. No, maybe he's not better than Frazier. Maybe he is. Maybe he'll uptick. Who knows? It's not likely. Maybe he strikes out too much, but he does a lot of other things really, really good. And you're right, Mike. I mean, defensively right now, offensively right now, Michael Martinez is on the 25-man. This isn't even 40-year-old Jason Giambi. This is Michael Martinez. Of course, every time I say this, he hits a home run. So I hope he hits a home run today. No, I don't. I don't want him in the lineup. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
But I don't know what questions.
I don't even remember the question. I think my three questions were: are they going to make a move? You said no. Bradley Zimmer, Clint Frazier discussion 2, and we've covered that. And then the third question, and maybe this is the most important question. Maybe this is why Frazier does come up. Was the discussion about Frazier and Zimmer really a shadow over Brantley? Coming up, or maybe that Brantley injury being a lot more serious, as Peter Gammons reported a couple of weeks ago, than people think.
Yeah, I think it is. God. Yeah, the Indians have 2 more years with an option year on Brantley. He's still taking soft toss right now. It's been, a month and a half? He doesn't need surgery, but he can't get out of soft toss. That's not good. Like when you don't need surgery, you're nursing your body and you can't get out of the soft toss stage for this long. That's big trouble. I think that the Frazier and Zimmer conversation are directly linked to the Brantley injury, and if we see him before the end of July, I'll be pretty excited because I don't see that happening. I think August is a really good outcome for the Indians at this point with Brantley, and I think that is hugely costly. And I hate to think that maybe like another month off for Brantley at the beginning of the season could have made it so that we'd have like 4 months of Brantley instead of the like 2 we're going to get this season at best. So that's where we are.
And we'll kind of leave it there. I losing Brantley with Jan Gomes struggling offensively and us still being a half game in first place maybe says it all for the season so far. And thankfully we've got this rotation and we're scoring tons and tons of runs because of the production from Napoli and of course Jose Ramirez and the unbelievable Francisco Lindor, who I'm going to use I'm going to say everything hyperbolic with regards to Francisco Lindor simply because well, again, you're not allowed to say anything good about anybody because it's always too much. He's the guy who it's not too much for. But we're not going to get into Lindor, at least not right this second. So the Indians, as we stand, are a half game up in front of the Kansas City Royals, who did sweep us. I think that's just the nature of the beast of where we're at right now. But to kind of close things out, Mike, it's kind of scary to me how good this Indians team could be if two things happen. One, players start getting utilized better. Two, the players that are struggling stop struggling, and we fill in maybe the hole of Brantley. This team has so much more upside, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, the lineup could be so deep. I mean, this is a lineup that if you add Brantley in, you have somebody really good hitting 6th and 7th. A really quality big league player. And right now, I mean, it's a lot deeper than last year. Right? Brantley is sort of this, he's a lengthening piece. And I love, I think one of the really interesting things that bodes well for the Indians is that when Brantley's healthy and Jose Ramirez, and with the current Carlos Santana, you have guys who put the ball in play a ton, and Lindor too. A lot of balls in play. And that bodes really well for the middle of the order because balls in play, make random weird stuff happen. And so you can sort of hide the Napoli strikeouts and Kipnis to a lesser extent with those guys who make a lot of contact and force stuff to happen. And I think that would make the lineup, you'd have solid power, and that would make the lineup even deeper because you have the ball in play all the time. And that really helps you with runners in scoring position.
Well, there you have it. We'll close up there. Really good ball team putting together hopefully a fantastic weekend series in what could be a transcendental weekend in Cleveland sports history. That being said, since the Cavs are out of town and a bunch of people are going to be downtown tomorrow anyways, how about this? Go downtown, support your Cleveland Indians. Let's see 30,000 plus next 2 days to watch a really good baseball team in June. And we know Francona teams only get better. At least that's what we keep telling ourselves. Let's go support our team now. Get us a couple of big wins so we can have a world champion tomorrow and a first place team as well. All right. On that note, Mike, thanks for joining me. We'll have to do this again sometime. Maybe not. Maybe we will. It'll be a secret. And on that note, we'll wrap it up. Go Cavs. Go Tribe. Go Cleveland. Fill the stands, people. Fill the stands. There are more than one team in Cleveland. And read. Yes. We didn't plug anything. That's okay. Read the list. It's our new daily piece, except for weekends, unless we want to do it on the weekend. Peace, love, soul, all that good stuff.